All right. All right, let's get this show on the road. And just so you guys know, we actually have two chats. One called chat, which is going to be used for engagement, and the other one is for Q&A. So if you have any questions that you want to get answered, please drop them in the Q&A chat, and then we'll answer it towards the end. But thank you everyone for joining here today. My name is Buki Sosa. I will be your host for today, and we are super excited to have you guys on the call. We have a very special guest here today that's going to be dropping a lot of gems about the do's and the don'ts of taking the best headshot photo for your child so you can actually get booked. Talia Perigo, she is a director of MMG Model in New York City, and MMG stands for Model Management. And one thing about her, she has over a decade of experience as an agent, so a very high success rate with her models, and she's very well known within the industry, you guys. So a boss lady in her own right. And just so you guys know, MMG represents models in different areas of the industry like print, commercials, television, runway, the list goes on. And her models have landed countless of print campaigns and commercials for brands like Louis Vuitton, Tommy Hilfiger, Ralph Lauren, Calvin Klein, Nike, David Yurmaine, Clinique, L'Oreal, the list goes on. I can't list them all. So she's booked many models that have walked in New York Fashion Week and also Miami Swim Week as well. And a fun fact about her is that her talent can be seen in TV shows like NBC's FBI, Project Runway, and movies like Bros. So please join me in welcoming Talia Perigo.
Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be here. I love getting to share my industry knowledge with all of you guys. It's so fun to do these interactive Zooms that we can just kind of pop on and all connect from all over the country or different countries. And in this case, like she said, I have been an agent for over a decade. I'm now the director of my agency. I represent kids, starting at around 4 years old, teens, adults, and I do TV, film, a little bit, mostly modeling, so mostly commercial and print work, but I've honestly done it all. I've booked every type of job you can think of. So when it comes to industry knowledge, I've got everything ready for you guys.
She is ready to go. Talia, how are you? How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm a little upset with you, Canada. You've brought us a little bit of smoke down here.
Not our fault. Don't blame us. It's global warming. Is
Otherwise,
bad though? Is it really bad on your end?
New York City's kind of crazy right now. It kind of feels like we're walking through the apocalypse. So I'm glad I'm inside. The Wi-Fi is still working, so we can still Zoom. I don't need to be outside right now. I'm happy to chill in here and chat with you guys.
On behalf of Canada, my apologies. Not our fault. It happens. But I'm glad that you're alive and you're doing great. And I think I can speak for everyone where we're really excited to have you join us and hear all the tips and tricks you have for taking the best quality headshot photo. But tell us, how does one prepare for a child's headshot photo? Like where do we even begin here?
Absolutely. So it's so important to recognize that there's lots of different types of headshots out there, and lots of different markets. So first and foremost is identifying your market. So that means kind of where you live and what types of jobs are accessible to you. So for example, New York, it's mostly the high-end fashion brands. You mentioned a lot of the jobs that I book, which is going to be Calvin Klein, Tommy Hilfiger, Ralph Lauren. If you're in Boston or Chicago, those are more lifestyle focused markets. Their big clients are more like Kohl's and JCPenney. So first and foremost, the best way to start is to figure out what is the demand of your market, where you live, and what clients are going to be booked in that market. In addition to that, if you have an agency, each agency has their own set of clients within that market. So it's really important that if you do have an agent, you connect with them directly to see what they want, because ultimately they know their clients best and they're going to be able to give you the best direction on what is most appropriate for your marketability.
So everything is just location based and being appealing to your, target and agency that you want to apply for, essentially.
Exactly. And then we have a little bit of difference between what are, going to be modeling headshots versus acting headshots. So
Mhm.
that's something that you should always take into consideration as well. If you're going to go, are you going for more the TV and film side of things, or are you going for more the modeling side of things? Because an acting headshot and a modeling headshot, ironically enough, look really, really different.
Now you mentioned with New York and the East Coast is more like high end. What about like down south? What about West Coast? Like how does the each area works when it comes to being
Absolutely.
marketable?
Yeah. So, a good way to start familiarizing yourself is to look at agency websites within your city. And that's going to kind of help you get a feel. So, like, if you look at headshots for New York versus LA, you're going to notice LA is really bright, tons of outdoor stuff, colors, very lively, and, lots of what's called on location images. You look at MMG and like more New York based companies, you're going to see it's a lot of more in studio,
Mhm.
clean, modern, white, black, gray backdrops, kind of crisp and clean.
Yeah.
Dallas, Miami, those markets, again, going to be more lifestyle, going to be more on location, and, outside shots.
Mhm.
So I think a really good way to start familiarizing yourself is to go through agency headshots that are within your city and within your market. And that's going to try to start to give you an idea of what your headshots should look like. Now, it's important to recognize that not every photographer is going to also be able to pull off those images that you're looking at. So that's something really, really important to keep in mind as well when you're starting out this journey. There is a big, big, big difference between portrait photographers, which are photographers who are going to do your Christmas cards, your
Yep.
senior photos, family portraits, maternity, engagement,
Yeah.
all of that kind of stuff. Portrait photographers are absolutely phenomenal, don't get me wrong, but ultimately not the correct choice for
Mhm.
professional modeling or acting photos. You should not use a portrait photographer for this. You want to use an actor's headshot photographer or a model portfolio photographer who specifically shoots for agencies in your market. So if you're trying to get signed in New York, you should be working with a New York City actors headshot photographer or a New York City kids fashion photographer. If you're trying to get signed in LA,
Mm.
likewise, Dallas, Chicago, Miami, you want to shoot directly in the market that you're applying for. For example, if you're located in, let's say, the Midwest, you're not really going to have any sort of, modeling agencies, fashion industry local to you. You're going to have
Yeah.
lots of great portrait photographers, but the images that you're likely to acquire local to you are ultimately probably not going to be ideal for a New York City agency. Now, if
Yeah.
you're starting local, then that's great. So it's just important to have realistic expectations, identify your goals, identify what's available to you locally, and if there's going to have to be travel involved to kind of reach those New York and LA levels of photography.
Okay, that makes sense. When it comes to, what somebody should wear for headshots, what are they? Should it look, professional, like a LinkedIn photo, or like should it be more like a carefree in the backyard type of thing? Like what are the best colors to wear, like depending on what your complexion is? Kind of talk us through that.
Absolutely. So less is more, keep it simple.
Yeah.
And by gosh, no stripes. That's
Big
a
no
big
no.
one. Big no is stripe. Um, so especially for kids, we're talking about kids photos today, kids and teens. We do not want to see them looking like professionals, right? We want to see, as much personality as that you can bring through in a photo. And just like if you're looking at someone on the street, your wardrobe goes into that, right? I usually say that jewel tones are your best friends. So that's going to be like kind of like the shirts that we're both wearing, actually. Muted colors that are like complementary, but don't kind of take over the photo. So you're not going to want to be in any neons. You're not going to want to be in a bright red. I'm so sorry. I just want to decline this call. I want to make sure it doesn't go through. Can you guys still hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. A call just popped up on my computer. So yeah, so jewel tones and neutrals are really, really safe bets. Like if you have blue eyes, I always say, wear either like green or a muted turquoise or a muted navy, like close to a blue that'll make your eyes pop. You can actually Google like best like clothing for certain skin tones and eye colors and things like that. Blacks and whites can be okay, but it depends on the backdrop. So kind of keep that in mind. If you're going to be shooting on a black backdrop, you can't be wearing a black shirt. If you're going to be shooting on a white backdrop, you can't be wearing a white shirt because you're going to blend too far into the background. We also want to avoid anything that's going to be distracting to the eye. So like I said, stripes are like my number one, like my pet peeve. We don't want like polka dots or spots. And another like really big industry no-no is no logos. So, we don't want you to have like the Nike swish on your headshot and then we're, pitching you for Puma. So just as a general rule of thumb, no neons, no overly bright colors, no logos, no distracting patterns. Layering can sometimes be really cool though. So I'm not talking about anything crazy, like don't be wearing two polos like to do the 2000s. But if you're wearing like a jean jacket or a leather jacket over a t-shirt, that can sometimes give off a really cool and effortless look. So don't be afraid to layer. Don't just think about one shirt when you're thinking about your headshots. Think of it as an overall wardrobe. And kind of, I always make people do this. I say take pictures of yourself, like have someone take pictures of you in the different wardrobe outfits, and then like look at them on the computer. And I always make my talent, if they're not hiring a wardrobe stylist for a photo shoot, have someone take pictures of them in the outfits and then send them to me, because you might think something's going to look great and then you see it on camera and you're like, ooh, like gray never looks good on camera. Okay, don't throw out the gray shirts for the photo shoot. But that's a really, really good tip that you can do. Have, mom, your friend take some photos of you and then look at them yourself, honestly, be like, does that look good when I post that on Instagram?
Essentially, less is more. Show your best assets, eyes, complexion, all of that.
Yes. And especially with kids, let's talk about makeup really quick.
Yes.
Because people kind of, don't realize if you're doing in studio flash photography, you are going to need some degree of makeup, even for kids. And they have, professional makeup artists do, are well accustomed to this, doing, very light and natural makeup on the kids. But, those flashes are bright, those lights are hot. Yep. Even those with the most flawless skin, like, it's going to help combat the flash. Usually with kids, I recommend like Vaseline. You should have like the proper powder and foundation on to combat any flashes. Kids also get bumps and bruises and things like that. So sometimes you got some things to cover up, but keep it really, really natural. And for any like teens in the chat, I love them, I have them, but no false lashes, ladies. Okay. Yeah, they look good, don't get me wrong, but the clients are looking to see your authentic appearance. And especially for kids and teens, they want them super natural and authentic. So it's okay to have what's called light on camera natural makeup, but you want to make sure that it's nothing crazy, no color eyeshadow, no, eyeliner wings, even though I love to wear those when I go out.
Yeah.
Keep it really simple. Even the boys, I always, the boys need makeup too on set very often, especially since the boys are getting into more trouble than the girls a lot of times. Sometimes I walk in and got black and blue on their forehead.
A little rough.
Yep. And then hair, obviously. So, again, you're showing your assets, like you said, show what you're working with. So a headshot with me looking like I do right now, you guys have no idea, like, is my hair, curly, straight? How long is it? You're not getting any information about my hair from my current appearance. I could have a buzz cut, or I could have, hair down to my booty. So make sure you are clearly showing, what you look like and what your assets are.
Those are really great tips. But I know it's really tempting to, get a camera phone and take your child's photo. But would you recommend, hiring a photographer, a professional photographer, or, doing it yourself and making it look as professional as possible? What would you say?
So it depends a bit on their age. When they're really little, cell phone photos are okay. So I'm talking, babies to 4 or 5 years old. The older you get, the more competitive it becomes. And that's because the older you get, the more the jobs pay. So babies might make like $200 a day. A 5-year-old might like $500 a day. A 10-year-old could be making like $2,000 a day. So it just, it keeps getting more and more professional, more and more serious the older you get.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the younger you are, the less quality material you can get away with. Again, it also depends on your market. So New York is super strict. If I submitted cell phone photos to Calvin Klein, they would look at me like, girl, are you
You lost
okay?
your mind.
What's going on, sis? If you're doing like TV real people stuff out in Chicago, Dallas, LA, that they're going to be a little more lax about it. So ultimately, again, it comes down to, recognizing your market and recognizing your area. In general, you're going to be taken a lot more seriously with professional photos. Now, if you're just submitting to an agency, then I would say cell phone snapshots are fine because, like I said, each agency is going to kind of want something different. So sometimes I'm almost like glad when a new kid is coming to me and has no photos, because I'm like, perfect. Now I can tell you like exactly what I want, exactly what I think is going to get you booked, which of my clients you're going to go for. Whereas sometimes if parents like go ahead and do these photo shoots, sometimes they'll come in and they'll have literally done a photo shoot a week before, spent all this money. And then I'm like, that's really not going to be ideal. So if you're just applying to agencies, cell phone photos are totally okay, but make sure that they look good. I'm not saying, just the amount of pictures I've gotten with kids, straight out of the shower with their hair wet, or, leaving for school with their backpack on and like sunglasses. You want to make sure that they are really clear images. If you don't have good lighting in your home, if you don't live in New York right now, because outside is going to be a great option. If you live in New York City right now, don't go outside. But you want to find really good lighting. Natural light can be a great resource for that. You want to make sure that you can clearly see your kid, and make sure that you can clearly see their appearance. So be clear that if they're straight on, no sunglasses, no glasses in general, no hats, no masks. Make sure that your kid is like posing straight on, like, as much as we love the like, that doesn't, that doesn't like, I need to be able to see the kid's natural appearance. So, you might, the term for these is digitals. So you want to kind of take digitals to submit to agencies. But when you're really submitting to any jobs, professional photos are going to separate you from the rest of the competition and just kind of showing that you're on a more serious level than everyone else. So it kind of depends, again, where you live, how serious that market is. If you're applying to agencies, and the types of jobs that you're going for. There are going to be certain circumstances where you can get away with cell phone snapshots, but in the more serious levels and the bigger jobs and the older you get, the professional images will be required.
Okay. And you mentioned glasses. So if a child wears glasses, you would suggest taking it off for the headshot photos.
Yes, for a number of reasons. Number one being the glare. A lot of times, it's impossible to avoid glare, and then I can't see what the kid's eyes look like.
Mhm.
I always recommend, obviously, this kind of depends on how old the kid is, but they don't need to wear contacts full time, but being able to use contacts on set if they have like severe vision impairment does become important. Most kids, they just use them for like, nearsightedness or whatever. So most of my kids are able to take off their glasses for their photo shoots without issue. But in the event that they're not, that is something to kind of think about. But yeah, there's always going to be somewhat of a glare with glasses. And also, depending on how bad your vision is, sometimes it distorts your eyes.
Yeah.
Like I know my mom puts her reading glasses on, she looks crazy.
Eyes really big.
Yes. So we just want to avoid anything that's going to be covering your face in any way.
Okay. And what about like Photoshop for kids? Like, is that a no-no, or what do you recommend there?
Okay.
Natural or
Yeah.
smoothed out? No,
All
no,
right. So
nothing.
I do not want to see like toddlers and tiaras headshots where they are like fake eyelashes, like porcelain smooth skin.
Yeah.
But a little bit of retouching is going to be necessary for any image. When we're talking about professional quality photos, these photographers are using like super high end mirrorless cameras that literally capture every pore on
Yeah.
your skin. Like you think you're real pretty until you see a high resolution photo of yourself.
You see everything.
You see everything, and even things
Yeah.
that you don't necessarily notice with the naked eye do
Mhm.
come up on camera. And while it's not true that the camera adds 15 pounds, it is true that the camera shows every imperfection.
Mhm.
So the photos should always be lightly retouched. One of the things that's important that's kind of hard to control on set is hair. So sometimes you're gonna have like a little baby hair poking out here, or sometimes I have a hair that's like going across the forehead or something. So a degree of retouching in Photoshop is necessary on any professional headshot, but obviously it should be kept incredibly natural. And it's interesting, like natural retouching is way harder to do than the Facetune Photoshop, that we see on social media, because that involves actually being able to go in and dodge and burn the individual pixels. So it takes a really, really talented photographer to do a good natural edit. Really important to keep in mind.
Okay. And another thing, when you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I want you to go in depth. When it comes to posing, like how should one pose for a child's headshot? Or is it going to be like the standard generic smile we give you? Talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So you're always going to want to have one serious headshot and one smiling headshot. That is like a super like general rule of thumb for all markets. You want to make sure that you can show off, the cool model or the cool actor, the edgy kid, and also the bright, bubbly girl who is, the social butterfly and
Yeah.
can, do calls and, be, the cheerleader in the movie. So you want to make sure that you're showing that you're versatile. So
Okay.
serious expressions and smiling expressions. And I think any person will understand what I say when I say know your good side. I
That's
can't stress like how important it is to practice at home and literally just, put your phone on or have someone, it's better to have someone hold the phone for you so the angle is correct, but have them just take like literally like 50 photos of you turning your head in different, directions. You don't realize how much like having your chin up versus here versus here
Mhm.
versus here
I'm
changes.
gonna-
People don't think about it. So actually, when you're doing a 3/4 shot, when you're looking towards the camera, If you extend your chin out a little bit, it elongates your neck. It feels really weird. This feels
It
really
does.
weird. Doesn't it? Doesn't my cheekbone look
But the jawline is
the
top.
jawline? Yes. So, and the photographers will coach you on set. They'll say chin up, chin down, chin out, back. Another thing, people get anxious and they'll walk on set and be like this. And on the amount of times I've had photographers be like, drop your shoulders, drop those shoulders. And
Yeah.
posture, we're always used to, being at a desk. Well, kids are at desks too. Different types of desks, but desks. So it'll be, and sometimes like kids especially, like they like they'll get excited and like one shoulder will start to creep. We have to be like, all right, drop that one down. So just being conscious of like everything that's within the frame. So that's going to be making sure your shoulders rolled back and down, chin, jawline, thinking about all these different things and practicing in front of the camera. A good photographer will notice these errors as they're, or not errors, notice these things as they're shooting and adjust the model accordingly. But the more confident your kid feels going into that photo shoot, the better. If your kid is going in there and has never even like practiced in front of you doing photo shoots on an iPhone, they're going to feel like, wow, this is totally new and foreign to me. Like, I always tell the parents, fool around, do mini photo shoots at home, practice posing. If it's just headshots, there's not a whole ton of posing. Model portfolios is where there's posing like crazy. So for headshots, luckily, it's a lot less going on to worry about. I mean, think about everything I just said that you had to worry about with headshots: shoulders, chin, chest, neck. You've got a whole other body going on down there when it's a photo shoot. So poses, keep it simple. I always say that. Sometimes I joke and I say kiss, keep it simple, stupid. So remember, kiss. I say that to my husband all the time. He's a fashion photographer, and one thing that's always important too with parents is you should not be directing your kid on set. Let the professionals do their thing. You never want to be that parent that's like, come on, honey, do that thing we practiced at home. Like that doesn't help.
It's probably.
It's more distracting than anything because the kid at that point is engaged with the photographer and they're listening to the photographer. And it's like when they're in school, they're paying attention to their teacher. If mom or dad is on the side giving commentary, it puts them in a conflicting position of who they should pay attention to. So parents on set, you really want to be a fly on the wall. Of course, be there for your kid, but sit and observe and only interject like if absolutely necessary or if the photographer specifically asks you to. So sometimes you might get a kid who's just really, really nervous. And, they might say, Mom, is there anything we can do to help? Dad, any thoughts? So unless like, it's specifically directed at you, let the photographer handle the posing.
Okay, so they're just spectators at that point.
You are spectating, you are hanging out, you have tickets to the show.
And for those at home watching, please tell us the difference between a commercial headshot and a kid's acting headshot. Like, what are the main characteristics that differs?
So acting headshots are typically going to be the more serious headshots. So this one's always popular.
Oh, yes.
You see that with lots of kids. Yeah. So, those are going to be typically for television and film. You're going to have, not as many big smiles, not as many bright colors. They're going to be a little more standard. One thing, I think that this is universally known, but I always just mention it just in case. Black and white photos are no longer used at all. So just always important to drop that. You might see those in modeling portfolios for adults when they're doing like cool, edgy, artistic shoots. But for kids, no, we're never going to see black and white headshots. So it's always going to be in color. Commercial, is going to be more smiley, more personality, a little bit more of them in the photo. So that's why I said it's always important that you have the serious shot and the smiling shot. And your agent will determine which shot to use based on the role. So just so you guys know, when we get, it's called a breakdown for a commercial, a TV show, or a movie, they tell us quite a bit about the character that they're looking for. So they'll say, looking for the nerdier type or looking for the school jock, and they'll kind of give us, an age range, a personality vibe, a look that they're looking for. So obviously, depending on that, we're going to submit the appropriate headshot accordingly. We're always going to choose the image that's going to best speak to the client. So for commercials, think about it. You never really see kids being super serious in commercials. It's usually like playing with a toy or something like that. So commercial headshots are usually going to be like those big smiles, bright eyes, big eyes, personality. And the TV and film sometimes are going to be more the the just serious, like, this is who I am. But again, it could vary based on the role that your agent is presented, what headshot they choose to use.
Okay, so do you suggest taking multiple photos for like different personality types, depending on the type of role you want to apply for?
Yeah, absolutely. Typically when you go into a headshot shoot, I would say you should aim to do 3 or 4 looks. So 3 or 4 different outfits. That's going to give you enough versatility to choose from. And sometimes, obviously this isn't ideal, but sometimes you might go into a photo shoot and, one of the outfit choices just doesn't work for whatever reason. It's just not translating well on camera. So if you only do a 2-look shoot, you're kind of leaving yourself at risk of only having one strong look to choose from. So I say at least 3, preferably 4. And like I said, don't forget about layers and different textures. So like if you're wearing a cotton shirt in one, with a jean jacket, definitely make sure you're not doing denim again. With the second look, go with leather. Make sure you're doing not every look with a collar. You want to make sure that it doesn't look repetitive. So, do one crew neck, do one V-neck, do one collar. Make sure that you've got lots of different options, and like make sure each 4 of your outfits is different. And like I said, I don't want to see anything crazy, but just make sure they're different enough to that it's giving you the proper versatility that you need, when you're deciding. So that, let's say you choose one headshot from each look, each one of those 4 headshots should be like its own unique vibe.
Okay, that makes sense. So just to summarize everything that we discussed so far, what are the qualities that make the best headshot for a child for those at home watching?
Okay, so number 1 is going to be photo quality. So we want to make sure we're working with an established kids acting headshot photographer or modeling photographer. Avoid portrait photographers. They use different equipment, they have different editing styles, and overall just a different, they produce a different product. So lighting is most important, even if this is, for the littler kids, parents who are shooting from home, or people that who are submitting to agencies. Really good lighting makes a photo. If you see a photo where the flash doesn't go off versus when the flash does go off, those images are so starkly different, and it's for a reason. Lighting really affects the image quality of a photo. So if you are taking photos at home, make sure that you've got a really good lighting setup. You could do like 3 ring lights even if you had to. Like I said, outdoors, natural light is really, really well, depending on the time of day. Make sure it's not like 1 p.m. when the sun's directly overhead, then you got sun in your eyes, you got people squinting. So there's lots of factors to keep in mind, but number 1 is lighting. Number 2 is going to be skin and hair. You want to make sure you are properly, you've got your grooming in order. Everything looks good. Teens, make sure your eyebrows are done. Men, if you do have facial hair, make sure that you're clean. For male teens, make sure you're freshly shaven. I always advise doing any shaving or waxing 2 to 3 days at least prior to the shoot, so it's still super fresh, but any residual redness is gone. So make sure your skin is in order. If you need to get a little trim on your hair, boys, now make sure the hair isn't in the eyes, make sure you've got their hair trimmed up. So skin and hair, make sure that's all in effect. And then wardrobe. So lighting, skin and hair, wardrobe, make sure you've really tackled all three of those well. And then for posing, make sure that you've tackled the posing, taken photos of yourself, learned your angles, learned what translates well on camera, get your kids comfortable doing that sort of thing, make sure they can stand still, especially the littler ones, make sure they're used to kind of being directed and, learning how to do that. So those I think are the big four things are going to be, just again, to reiterate to everybody, it's going to be the lighting on the photo, skin and hair, your wardrobe, and your posing.
All right, sounds good. So now we're opening the Q&A session. We definitely have some questions popping in. Number one, where does MMG take their models from? Is it just only in New York or California, or what locations do you mainly work with?
So MMG is headquartered out of New York City. That's like kind of what we're famous for, is our jobs in New York. Post COVID, things are really, really different. So pre-COVID, you would like have to like literally jump in your car and get to New York on 24-hour notice for a go see or a casting. Now the castings, I'm not going to say all, because some have gone back to in person, but most are still virtual. So MMG's primarily in New York. We also have an agency in LA, and we're also licensed for the South and Southeast. So the South covers Texas, Oklahoma, Arizona, and Mississippi. And the Southeast covers North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama. So we're licensed for the South and Southeast, and then New York and LA. So the majority of our bookings are in New York. But in terms of where I will consider talent from, if you're able to travel to New York for, oh, I'm so sorry, my puppy, 1 second.
No worries.
Sorry, it's a husky, so he's vocal sometimes. Sorry about that. For me, if you're able to travel and get there for the job, I mean, it probably wouldn't be realistic if you work or lived in Hawaii. But as long as you're within a reasonable flight or driving time and you're okay with, that commitment and getting to New York, I'm not really going to flinch if you don't live directly in New York anymore, because you don't need to be located in the tri-state area to be signed with a New York City agency anymore. Given the amount of virtual auditions, obviously getting to LA, from LA to New York or New York to LA, those are longer flights and not as realistic. But I do have people who are bi-coastal. I've got talent who live in Denver and they just, go one way or the other. So nothing's off the table post-COVID with all the virtual auditions. It's just making sure that it's going to be realistic for your family, your work, what your availability looks like. If you can, take off work on, 48 to 72 hours notice to get your kid to a job. So for me personally, I'm really flexible and open. It kind of is a case by case basis, depending on, the commitment that I'm seeing, from the parent. A lot of it is on the parent. Since, when you're dealing with kids and teens. And so, there's some parents who've got really strict jobs and it's just totally off the table. You've got sometimes where it's a stay-at-home mom and, they're able to, pick up and take the kid. So it really depends on your personal situation, what agencies you should look for in terms of where they're located.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, if somebody has braces, should they wait until their photos, until the braces comes off, or should we, edit it out? Like, what would you say for that?
So it depends a bit on how long they'll have the braces for. If they're going to have those braces for 2 years, then yeah, you have to shoot with the braces on, because that's going to be their look, right? If they're gonna get them off in a month, wait. So, if they're going to get them off in like 6 months, it's a little bit hard to say. The thing that I've learned with braces, which is a big pain in the butt, is that the orthodontists always give us an approximation of when the braces are coming off.
That's
And
good.
this is something that I've come to be very irritated by as an agent. Because sometimes they'll be like August, and I'm like, yay. And then it's August, and they're like, oh no, they need 2 more months. They haven't shifted fast enough. So it's tough. If you're going to need to have them on for like 6 months or more, I would say just go ahead and shoot with them on. You can make sure to do a lot of closed mouth shots. This is what I usually suggest. Focus on closed mouth shots. And then once the braces come off, you can do just a small update, like a big smiling photos to show that. But that way you're kind of covered and you can start getting your name out there, start doing the submissions, and you're not kind of hindered and you're not having to wait for 6 months to get your career started. But that way you don't have to kind of start from scratch once the braces come off. So a bit situational, depends on your orthodontist too. And also age, some with the kids, sometimes I have the other thing where we're missing teeth, right? So I'll just touch on that really quickly too. If your kid, has a photo shoot coming out and they lose like their front tooth or something, not a huge deal. One, teeth are pretty easy to Photoshop, but two, I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but it's really common in modeling. You can actually have a flipper made that just is like a retainer that pops in that one tooth or the two teeth that are missing or something like that. So, don't cancel a photo shoot because a tooth falls out. It happens. It's normal. Don't wait to start your modeling career because you're going to have braces on for 6 months to a year. There's always, different options that you can utilize, to make sure that you're at least, getting moving.
Okay. Another question asked is, when it comes to the length of the headshot, do you recommend neck up or shoulder or chest? Like, what is the measurements for those?
So usually the photographers will take a series of headshots. Chin up, no, that is called a beauty headshot. That's specific to adult modeling. And that's when it's like, we're submitting to like skincare or makeup and like, they just want like face. For most headshots, you're going to want kind of like collarbone and up. But even like this is going to be okay. Chest and up, that's going to help you have a little bit of versatility. You're going to have some that are a little bit tighter frame, some that are a little bit, you have a larger frame. Thing that's important to keep in mind is when you're looking at the photos that, the photographer sends back, even if they're really far back like this, remember that can always be cropped in. So sometimes photographers will shoot with a little bit of what's called extra dead space, just to make sure nothing's getting cut off. Like one of the things that drives me the craziest is when the top of your head's cut off like this. I can't tell you how mad that
We need to pull the full.
We need this. Yeah. So there should always be space above the head. So a lot of times photographers will shoot with like lots of extra dead space. And then in the final edit, it'll be cropped in a little bit tighter. So in some, you want to have some dead space above your head, on the sides of your head, and collarbone up or chest up are going to be the common frames.
Okay. Sounds good. And as far as tying your hair back, or how should the hair be styled? Somebody was asking, does kids 2 to 3 need makeup? So like toddlers and things like that.
Little munchkins. We just want to see them being cute munchkins. Obviously they don't need makeup, unless something crazy happens. So in terms of hair, so like I said, you want to always show what you're working with to a degree. You never, but with kids, especially girls, pigtails could be really cute. I think that's adorable sometimes to see. So you always want one headshot that's down and natural. Always. One smiling, one serious, down and natural. That's gonna just kind of be your template. But some girls like slay a slicked up bun, not like mine right now. This is not cute for headshot. But like a high bun can be really, really, really pretty. And this is more for teens. It accentuates the cheekbones. for boys, if you want to do one look with product in your hair and one without product in your hair, so you've got kind of like one where it's like the slick back look off of your face, one normal. Ponytails can be hard because if it's just like ponytail, unless you're like fully turned, you're not going to see any of the hair. So
Yeah.
sometimes a low pony can be a good idea. Sometimes for like little girls, like I said, pigtails could be really, really cute. But you just never kind of want to look like you're wearing a bald cap, kind of like I do right now. You always want to be showing a little bit of something of what you're working with.
Yeah.
So, and again, like it depends on the age. Like a teenage girl shouldn't have pigtails. A little girl shouldn't have a slicked back bun. But you know, showing what you're working with is important. So like if you've got really just like strong facial features, you know, doing something that's more, you know, up off of your face is really good. Again, that's going to be, or like for little girls, the little girls can pull off like the high ponies, like that looks cute. The
Yeah.
teens shouldn't be doing that though. So it really depends on age, what's going to be age appropriate. But there are different things that you can mess with. I've even seen people do like an extra option where they've got the hair and you know, two braids. I know someone asked about African American 5-year-olds. I love a fro. Personally, love a fro. Love to see natural hair. And you know, just always remember it can be like perfected in editing. No one looks perfect. You know, sometimes you see these headshots and you're like, wow, that she just has like the perfect circle hair. Like, no, she doesn't. That's Photoshop. So I personally and the clients really love to see natural hair. You know, nowadays, some women, probably like yourself, have some with natural hair, some with braids. That's really common too. If you have African American models who use protective hairstyles, obviously we always want hair in good health. So having a braid look and a natural look can be a great option to achieve that. So again, I know that was a lot. So it really depends on your age, your ethnicity, and your demographic.
Okay. And what advice do you have for us in Canada as far as like the market goes and you know, really putting ourselves out there? I know that was one of the questions that was asked.
So yeah, absolutely. So most Canadian talent are looking to pursue jobs in the US. I'm assuming that was, I didn't see the question in specific, but the first step that you want to check out is like getting your working papers in order for the US. If you do that before you apply to an agency, you have a way better chance of them being interested in you because it's way less work for the agent. Not many agencies are going to help with the visa process. So if somebody comes and says, hey, I've already got my working visa, I'm good to go, you've got a way better chance of being selected, but you have to be legal to work in the States. If we're talking about work obviously within Canada and locally, then that's, you know, then that you're good to go for that. And the rules of the photos are pretty much the same. We had a Canada location for quite a few years. It's funny, like a lot of American shows like Riverdale, really popular show, shoots out of Canada. And so they'll need like day players and extra roles for those shows. But it's funny, the casting will often be the American casting directors, you know, and then still booking in Canada. So everything still applies to what I said, even for the US shows filming in Canada.
And for the level of camera, like what would be the best level for the camera to be when taking a good photo for the face?
Straight on.
Mhm.
So it's really funny. Like I said, my husband's a fashion photographer and he's 6'4". And when he is shooting kids, he like literally sits on like a tiny stool so that he's like the same level as them. So you never want like a downward angle or an upward angle. It should always be straight on. So like parents, that means if you got to get low to be on your kids level. Obviously toddlers and babies, like you can't literally lay on the floor, but you know, doing your best to like hold the camera
Yeah.
down is going to be ideal. Or if you got a really tall model, you might have to hold the camera up, or you know, I've actually, you know, seen there's this really cute photographer that I love, and she's only 5'1", and she shoots like 6-foot male models. And she'll have to often like stand on like one of those like, step ladder things.
Yeah.
Straight on, whatever you got to do to make that happen, you got to do.
So much finessing going on.
Yes. And the behind the scenes is always hilarious.
And the last question I see on here is, how do you get a working visa for a baby?
So that's really, really tough. I'm not going to lie. So to get a visa, you need to show like X amount of experience. And so that can be really, really difficult to do. When the younger they are, the more harder it's going to be. I would recommend starting locally, and, you know, establishing them as a baby model locally, showing that they have jobs booked and are in demand. But generally speaking, it's not going to be super realistic to get a visa approved for a baby. It's really, really difficult, unless the parent is a dual citizen or something like that, or you're doing like mommy and me jobs, you know, family jobs. There's enough American babies to be booked. So, you know, the older you are, the more realistic attaining a US work visa will be. There are also like certain child permits that are needed per state in the US. So California has one, New York has one. There's lots of states that don't have them. So it's also important to look at the child labor laws and the performer permits per state, depending on where you're applying for work. So even if you live in, you know, Illinois, if you're a minor doing a modeling or acting job in New York, you need a child performer permit for New York. And I can drop the link to that in the chat really quickly for you guys, so you can read a little bit more about it. And you need one for, it's per state, for like for New York and for California. Just so you guys have an idea what the heck I am talking about.
Is it for all the states?
So that's the one for New York. Just so you can get an idea like what the heck I'm talking about. Just if you want to check it out, the California one would be separate.
Okay. What advice do you have for babies under 1 year old? That's with the headshots.
So obviously, babies, like, you just want them to be cute. So babies don't need to do the serious, you know. Babies, you know, think of the Gerber baby, think of the Pampers baby, look at, you know, current campaigns that feature babies. They're usually, Florida does not have a work permit. For babies, it's just smiley, big eyes, you know. I booked the national Nike baby campaign for one of my little guys. I think he was about a year when he booked it. And their criteria was must be able to sit up and crawl. So it's so funny. So it depends on age too. But fun fact for everyone, they can legally start working at 11 days old. But yes, the littler they are, the less specific they're going to be about the photos, and the more hands-on the parents will have to be on set. So, you know, it's like a lot of look at me.
That's the only time they can interject, pretty much.
Yeah. So, you know, for little babies, just make sure the photos have good lighting. You can clearly see what they look like. You can see their eyes. That's a big one. Can clearly see their eyes, see that big smile, and see that they can like light up and pop on camera.
Yeah. The last question on here is for babies. What do you recommend when it comes to getting them selected? Is there like any specific requirements that agencies are looking for?
So I'm not gonna lie, a lot of agencies don't do babies because the jobs pay so little. For me, that's why I said I really start scouting at like 4 years old and up. Sometimes I'll take a 3-year-old. depending on sizing. But for babies, the jobs are really, really sporadic. They're not consistent. They pop up here and there, and they're pretty low pay. So there's not a whole ton of agents that do babies. If there is an agency that does babies, then they're going to kind of have the stronghold for that market. Pampers and Gerber are going to know, go to that agency for babies. I kind of work with babies on more of a freelance basis. Like, all right, who has a younger sibling that's 3 months old? Or like, who's just given birth? Just because they pop up that infrequently that, doing the kind of the momager thing is going to be more realistic. Or finding an agency that specializes in just babies. Like in New York, there's an agency called Expecting, and it signs the moms when they're pregnant, and then they also have contract on the baby for 1 year when they're born. Oh, wow. So Expecting in New York is definitely like the baby agency in New York. So it varies by market, but the younger they are, the tougher it is because the less jobs they are. So it's, the older they are, the more realistic, child modeling is really from like 4 to 12. Toddlers and babies, it's going to just be more like a job pops up here, a job pops up there kind of thing.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, I know because as they grow, they change so much. So how often would you recommend to get those headshots updated, especially like the young ones?
So the younger they are, obviously more frequently they're going to have to get them updated. For like once they hit like 6 years old, I usually say it really depends on the kids, but usually they don't go through a big growth spurt until they're like getting close to being tweens. So like a 6-year-old can probably get away with those photos until they're 7.5. Obviously the older they get, the less they're changing. But it really depends on the specific model. Like if you have a kid and they have braces come off, probably should update their photos. If they're, really, really, really young, if we've got like, babies and toddlers, you're going to want to be sending your agent updated snapshots probably like every 4 to 6 months. So the younger they are, the more often you're going to have to update their photos. But again, you can, like I always say, take your kid's headshot, take a photo of them on your phone, put them next to each other. Do they still look the same? If they don't, it's time to update.
All right. Sounds good. But yeah, no, that concludes, that's the last of questions that we have.
Perfect timing, right on the dot.
Right on time. But honestly, Talia, thank you so much for joining this discussion. It was very informative for the audience watching at home, and I'm sure they were taking a lot of notes like crazy. But for those watching, if you guys have any more questions, don't hesitate to reach out to Kate. Her email is actually attached to the Zoom invite, so you can message her directly for any additional information. Otherwise, I hope to see you guys again soon. So until next time, bye-bye.
Bye everyone. Thank you.